Welcome everyone to the Driving the Business of Science podcast. This podcast series we started because I wanted to talk to people about all the other avenues of life science that most people don't think about. Maybe people think about the scientist developing a drug or developing a biologic or some kind of medical device. We run into so many people that are ancillary to the life science field but very essential to what we do when we develop new drugs and go out to market. So this is Driving the Business of Science. And today, my name is Keith Parent. I am the CEO of Court Square Group. Court Square Group is a managed service firm. We manage IT infrastructure for life science companies, pharmaceutical, biotech, med device companies. We host and manage applications all the way from preclinical through manufacturing. We also have a system called RegDocs 365, which is a content repository that hosts clinical and regulatory content. And we've got a whole series of AI tools that we've built into that content management system as well. Today, we have a very interesting guest with us, Mario Perkins, who is the president and co-founder of Triam Limited. He has a data management company that we've just started working with, and I thought his story was pretty unique, so I wanted to have him on today and talk about what they do. So, Mario, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and talking a little bit about Triam.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Keith, we have been chatting now for a little bit. I'm glad to see that, things have moved forward where we're working together. And so Triam, we have a team of very sharp individuals that really bring a lot of business consulting to the table. And we've done a lot in the analytics space. We work with various forms of data in a wide array of industries, but we have a strong focus in healthcare and the life sciences. So we're seeing a lot of growth there, many things happening on all fronts. So historically, we worked with some of the larger health insurance companies, different organizations in that realm of things. More recently, we're seeing things in the life science and pharma related organizations and activities. So happy to be here today talking to you about this. Been very impressed with everything I've seen happening with your organization and the options that you provide and the service that is there. But so we've been focusing on trying to help clients get a better handle on their data. It's coming in a wide range of areas, and we're just seeing that explosion taking place pretty rapidly. So we're bringing a lot of skill into this realm to try to help our clients get a better handle on what their data is and how to analyze that.
Now, when we talk about data, we talk about data management firms. Do you consider Triam to be a data management firm, or is there some other classification you would call Triam?
Well, Triam was both data management and analytics. So we have a long history with different types of working with different types of data, but we'll take that data and then try to help it make sense to an end user. There's so much volume out there, and we try to clean it up, make sure that it's in good shape, because unless you have good data, you won't have good analytics either. So we found that the two have to be married together to better understand what's taking place. You have to be able to get the data in good working order, for sure.
Now, what kind of data do you analyze? Is there certain areas within the drug development life cycle that you get involved? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so we have been working with clients more recently that are the ones that work with the data. So we're seeing a lot with clinical trials activity, people that are providing some of those analytics. We will assist with some of that as well. But we are kind of seeing how information is being captured from a whole host of different sources of information, with the expansion of a lot of the health systems that are out there, with the deeper science that has taken place, some of the AI that also comes into play that is helping with some of the analysis, but also with the data capture, bringing information in from various forms that historically you couldn't even, think about accessing that information in very free form ways. We're able to now capture that information and make it part of the underlying that unstructured data and make it a part of their reservoir of information to analyze.
Right. Earlier, we talked about the fact that you were outside the life science and you're doing a lot of healthcare data. Talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that and how you transitioned over to some of the life science data that you're now doing.
Well, traditionally, we have had a great deal of experience working with some of the health insurance companies that are out there. They're working with uh, in claims and enrollment and providers and just a wide array of things on the health insurance side. But part of that is also drug claims and drug activity. So when we started getting into the pharma data, we saw a natural progression and fit into us working with some of the pharmaceutical groups. We have a long tradition working with the SAS language as part of our analytics and data activity. We found SAS to be a very strong and flexible option, along with, now more recently, some of the open source options that are out there, Python and R and whatnot. So, we are able to blend all of those skills, and we're seeing a good fit for our skills in the life science and pharmaceutical side of things.
Well, with the explosion of data on the life science side of things, tell me a little bit about that and how that's affected your business and what you guys have done to kind of stay ahead of that explosion.
Well, so we've started working with some different organizations, and in many cases, they are needing some help on the SAS language side of things. They've been working with some of the more recent open source options, but some of the resources just aren't as available now on the SAS language front. So, and we have also been partnering with a kind of a disruptive company called Altair with their SLC product, which allows us to run and utilize the SAS language as well as the open source options and bring it all together. So our relationship with them and working with that software has kind of opened up some of those doors for us to be very actively involved for these clients, these customers that are needing some of that kind of assistance and growth over time.
We've over time we've hosted lots of different applications, and we've hosted, SAS and Spotfire and some of the different and analytical tools that are out there. It's interesting. I've been in this industry long enough that I can remember people talking about SPSS and then shifting over to SAS and
Right.
now shifting to R and different things. And you think about, the legacy applications versus some of the open source applications and some of the shift. And you think about academia, and a lot of times many of the open source take precedent because you find that academicians can use it for free, or they get a very good way of being able to use some of those tools. So you see all of a sudden a shift, and all of a sudden now you've got different people coming out of the woodwork that know certain areas way more than they know some of the legacy products. Have you seen
Right.
that as part of what's going on in your world?
Oh, most definitely. So, in times past, people coming out would have had, let's say, as part of their, um, master's program or analytic program, they'd come out with of school with, either SAS or SPSS or I don't know, in some cases like MATLAB or whatever, different product offerings that are out there that focused on doing analytics primarily. I mean, data management, of course, but the analytics side of things. More recently, though, yeah, there's been a much bigger wave of Python and R and the open source options that are out there, for people that are coming into the marketplace. So, there really is a mix now because some of the larger organizations, they have a deep long-standing and large investment in their, let's say, their SAS language environment, their legacy environment, and maybe SPSS or something else. But and trying to marry that up with an open source option is quite challenging and very costly. So we're trying to find some measures that will allow them to bridge those gaps, to be able to still utilize their legacy SAS processing and environment, but also venture into some of the open source options that the more recent activity is allowing for. Traditionally, even the FDA was always wanting to see information coming in out of a SAS-based environment, and now they're being more open to these open source options. So we're definitely seeing a shift in the whole landscape that's out there and how the data is prepared, processed, analyzed, and even submitted now. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, now that we're working together and we've been able to do stuff, we're actually talking about a couple things, obviously with Altair and SLC and hosting that environment. One of the things I think that people don't realize is that every industry, every type of application kind of goes through a shift where the company that becomes the dominant company in one area becomes almost too big for its britches, and all of a sudden you try to figure out how do we go around, and now you've got the open source coming out, people are looking at options, but they're so stuck. You mentioned that the legacy application, there's so much investment in that people are afraid to go somewhere else, whereas now you have an option with a compiler that will actually take all of the existing source code that you've got, and I think it's like 98% of it you can actually compile and create applications that run on their own without having the interpreter behind it for doing that, and still give you the ability to leverage the people you have that are developing that while you think about shifting to a different thing. So a lot of times it becomes just a cost model because they can't afford to keep that legacy application around anymore, and they need to shift from that. So it's interesting that you see that shift and that there are ways to go from one area to another and have that transition period when you're doing that. So I that's important when we got together and started to talk about some of that. I think that you're going to see a lot of people starting to shift to some of that. Plus, the younger people coming out of the research institutes or coming out of the universities, they want to use the latest and greatest tools. They don't want to get stuck using legacy stuff. I saw that a lot of times, even in my own developers, when you're talking about different languages and switching over from one language to another. Nobody wants to be a COBOL programmer, even though there's tons of COBOL programs out there, right? They want to switch.
Yeah,
So I think that's a huge area. Tell me a little bit about the latest buzzwords around AI and machine learning and things like that. What are you guys doing around that area of the data management world?
Well, we're seeing AI coming in to be a real benefit in the life science space, okay? Because it can analyze information so quickly and provide feedback that may have been kind of unknown in the past. It can find different elements that, as somebody's trying to go through some of their scientific evaluation of different data flows and data elements, AI can really pull things up in a much more rapid way and see some different outliers and different ways in which the information is maybe not as obvious from a scientific standpoint. So, you can reduce some of that time that you would normally have to go through heavy clinical trials to find some outlier that you have to address. Where with AI involved, it can really help with some of the identification of some of that. But it also, I think, just helps give you better opportunity to get, improvements in the various factors for even case management for different patients that might have some kind of multi-condition situation, that because AI can take all those various factors and combine them, can actually help with some of the diagnosis or diagnostic options at least, so that the information now is becoming much more available to even the most advanced, highly trained and experienced uh, physicians or analysts that are out there to see that, wow, okay, this information would identify very specific, criteria that, may have taken them quite a while to even identify. So we're seeing some of that. We're also seeing just kind of an evolution of bringing some diverse data together that may have had certain anomalies. In the past, we would always apply like some fuzzy logic to try to clean up data and create better data quality. And and that's still definitely a factor. But I think on the data side, AI has kind of been an evolution of this fuzzy logic that it allows you to find even more and bring some of the uh, consistency and continuity from a data quality standpoint as well.
Tell me a little bit more about data quality, because I don't think enough people realize how much effort goes into making sure that the data that we're actually using to approve drugs and to look at the results for clinical trials and how that works, and how sometimes the data just isn't clean. And what does that mean? And how do we clean that?
Well, it goes back to just how the data is entered, right? It's simple truths that, there's many times just not a standardized click this, click that type of thing. So you're at the mercy of how somebody is typing this information in. And there's a lot of inconsistencies there. So fuzzy logic then will allow you to tune that so that something that might be truncated here or misspelled there, or just some variations in some of the terminology that is even being used, um, can become a little more consistent and create, some commonality that will allow you to even gauge how loosely or tightly you want those comparisons to be made. So just cleaning up data with that type of fuzzy logic goes a long way to more standardize the information.
Excellent. You mentioned a little bit earlier the whole concept around data quality and things like that. What I think people don't realize is that sometimes in this industry we actually create some of our own problems. And I think about it as like we have data entry systems that sometimes you'll be at a place and somebody will print out a screen and then they'll fill it out on a printed piece of paper because they don't want to put it in or do
Right.
something like that. And then all of a sudden they'll scan it in and they'll send that over. And then all of a sudden you can't read that or whatever. We deal with that all the time when we get in
Sure.
documents or data that comes in from different places. And
Yeah.
the whole point of putting together electronic systems is so that you minimize the amount of that kind of work. And based on whether it's lack of resources at a clinical site or lack of training for the people using the systems, sometimes it's just easier for them to do it the way that they're doing it. People hate change. So all of a sudden they're doing it one way versus another. And
Right.
now you've created your problems. And we've seen things like that where all of a sudden, somebody at a clinical site will take a bunch of documents that are printed out, filled out, and they'll put them on a stack on a copier and scan them all in and then send you one big PDF. And now you get a whole different problem. So
Right.
it's amazing that these kind of things happen in the industry and that
Mhm.
you wonder why it takes so long to get drugs approved and to get clinical trial results out and why it's so long after you're getting data back that we're working on cleaning the data, and we're even talking about cleaning the data. Why, as a person taking drugs from some big pharmaceutical, you're hoping that we would have gotten past that years ago. Here we are in 2025 and we're still talking about cleaning data.
Oh,
It's kind of
cleaning
crazy,
data,
isn't it?
right. Now, but part of that data explosion is the fact that we can now capture some of that information that, from a PDF document that historically, you wouldn't have that in a given field, right? You always had to have a spreadsheet or a form or something online that would require somebody to type all that in, right? But now, with some of the newer technology that's available, you can actually scan, pull in information from these historically, unavailable sources. And now that information's available to then be kind of sliced and diced and broken out and then, cleaned up through the fuzzy logic and the different things. But it does give you the ability to expand the volume of data that you can include for your analysis now. Because in the past, if they sent you that big, big file of PDF scans that they did, you know, uh, you couldn't use it. You'd
Yeah.
have to say, well, somebody get in there and just go through each one and, type it all in. And there are options now that allow us to capture some of that information and use it. It's
Some of the
quite
life science
exciting.
applications, there's a high cost of running a lot of these life science applications because you have to be qualified and validated and all the other stuff. Talk to me a little bit about the difference between doing the on-premise type of applications versus cloud-based applications, and how has your business shifted over time from one to the other, or vice versa?
Right, right. Well, with the advent of this explosion of data, getting back to data, right? Um, the some of the more traditional on-prem database options that clients would have, they would have to grow significantly. So your Oracles and your Teradatas, or these large database engines, excuse me, those would um, just have to be maintained, grown, and managed internally at a hefty price. Um, and some of the clients are realizing that, yeah, this probably is data better put into more of a cloud environment and start using like Snowflake or Databricks or some other storage mechanism that is probably more conducive in a cloud environment, that as long as it can be, secured and approved and these type of things for the type of work that they're doing, it offloads some of that expense, the cost, the overhead, all of it that's required traditionally, trying to keep it on-prem, as long as they can find a really sound, solid option to take that information and take some of that offline. Now, we also are seeing quite a bit of hybrid. So going exclusively cloud or exclusively in-house, it's kind of more of a hybrid approach. People still like to have some of their own information, their own servers, this type of thing, but they do take quite a bit now to the cloud.
We work with a lot of data management companies. We work with a lot of bioinformatics groups within big companies, and dealing with that. Sometimes it's an issue of having enough CPU power to run large data sets, being able to do some of that work. The AI and ML engines that are out there, sometimes they need a lot of computing power to make them work. So I
Oh,
can
yeah.
understand that, particularly with the larger the data set and how that works.
Excuse me.
From a marketing perspective and going to market and doing projects with different companies, are you working more with the sponsor companies themselves, or are you working more with CROs that are looking for your services to augment what they're doing in the clinical trial space?
Well, we're actually just starting to get more involved on the CRO front. We're really trying to help facilitate and kind of shift some of the SaaS expertise and knowledge base that they might be losing internally. That's a sweet spot, strong spot for us. Not that, we work with the other technologies as well, but having that ability to uh, work with all fronts, I think is very, very strong, very solid for the client to know that they have somebody helping them that will help with their SaaS language, help with their open source, and even help with the transition if they're wanting to convert some things over as well. So, we can help with that entire journey along the way. I do have some people on my staff that have, worked in clinical trials and done that type of consulting work as well. But, that's kind of growing to see, where we can help clients out. A lot of those clients either have staff or they've outsourced some of that already. So we're helping bridge the gap from a technology standpoint again, with some of this disruptive technology that this Altair SLC is providing, allows them to really explore all of it. Their traditional SAS language runs very seamlessly in this environment, but then they also can incorporate some of the open source options directly as well. And it's kind of a one-stop shop to be able to utilize all of the various options that are becoming very prevalent in the marketplace today.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Mario, I really enjoy hearing more about your business, what's going on, how you guys work. And any last thoughts for the audience out there as we come up on time here? Things that you want them to know about Triam, about you, about the work you guys do?
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, we are really out here trying to help our clients meet and exceed their needs. I've always been a proponent of, the best consultants are the ones that work themselves out of a job. So we don't try to retire on somebody's back, right? We come in and try to help them meet their needs, whatever that is, get to a point where we can do some knowledge transfer, get them, comfortable working with whatever they've asked us to develop. So we'll do some knowledge transfer. And then, if they want to continue using us for some other project or something else, we're happy to provide that. But, we're trying to untether ourselves from clients as we meet and exceed their needs. So that's
Fantastic.
just kind of where we're at with this. One last thing I want to mention though, Keith, I've been very impressed with your organization, the responsiveness that you provided to clients, the willingness for you directly to get involved and have these conversations with them and provide a very, very secure environment that goes above and beyond as well. So I think our philosophy from consulting and your philosophy for providing what you provide to these organizations are very well suited and fit very nicely. So
Well,
kudos to
Mario,
you
I
guys.
thank you for that, and I appreciate the kind words. I think that as a company, we strive to make sure that, particularly in the life science field, we know the compliance aspects of things. We understand the regulations that we need to make sure that we maintain. So, working with companies like you that really have to do the job for the sponsors, for the CROs, for all the client base that we have, it's great to be able to work with companies like yours as well, and provide a great solution. Like I've always said in the past, we don't have to know everything about everything. We just have to know the right people. And I think you're one of the right people. So again, thank you very much for being here. Thanks for the kind words for everybody out there. And I'll look forward to talking to you some more in the future. And I want to
Absolutely.
thank everybody. This has been Driving the Business of Science podcast with our guest today, Mario Perkins from Triam Limited. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.